Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had to put a police report and everything out front, and the police found them dead later. Did their honest, but.
Okay. And so I don't think I have to hit play, do I? This is go live. I know.
Yeah, it
Hope
should
we're
be,
going.
should be good.
Bob, let me know when you got the
Yeah.
tech support done.
Yeah. Plans in there, if you want to do it.
Look at this. And that's that.
Be good.
Already? All right. And good evening. We want to open the joint meeting of the Riley County Planning Board, Board of Zoning Appeals. And we have rules for the public comment sessions. These rules apply to all meetings of the Riley County Planning Board and Board of Zoning Appeals. Public comments shall be limited to no more than 5 minutes for each speaker. The time limit does not include questions asked by board members. The chair reserves the right to extend speaker time should the situation warrant doing so. All comments should be directed to the board. All speakers should go to the podium to make comments, stating their full name and address before beginning. Public comment shall only be made during the designated time on the agenda at any public meeting. Public comments are out of order if made outside the designated time on the agenda of the public meeting and without speaker having first been recognized by the chair. Remarks of individual speakers shall not simply be repetitive of identical comments made by prior speakers. Verbal or visual personal attacks on private citizens, staff, or board members should not be allowed. Speakers who violate any one or more of the rules shall be asked to end their comments, and speakers or non-speakers who have attended the meeting whose conduct disrupts the orderly and dignified content of any public meeting at any time will be asked by the chair to leave such meeting. Next, we have open public comments. This is for items that aren't on the agenda. I don't know if anybody has anything they wanted to do for the open public comments. Okay, moving on. We have the consent agenda consisting of the July 14th meeting minutes and the report of fees for the month of July. Anybody have any comments or questions on those?
Chairman, I move that the consent agenda be approved.
All right, all in favor? All right, next we're going to adjourn the joint meeting of the Riley County Planning Board. So we need a motion to that, I believe, to reconvene as the Riley County Planning, because there's nothing on the Board of Zoning Appeals. We're going to skip that one also.
So moved. Second.
All right. All right, now we are,
Got to vote on it.
yeah, I got to vote. Yes. Shall we vote?
Aye.
All right. Now we're reconvening as the Riley County Planning Board. We have a public hearing to consider the request. Want to go over that in University Parks?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, good evening, folks. Might have to speak up. Couch has made application with Riley County Planning and Development requesting to replat lots 270 and 271, the University Park, into a single lot. The subject site is generally located approximately 500 feet northeast of Hawthorne Lane on the south side of Red Bud Drive in Sherman Township. The subject property was originally platted as lots 270 and 271 University Park in September of 1959 and later zoned residential during the 1974 zoning conversion process. The applicant wishes to combine the aforementioned lots into a single lot in order to build an accessory structure. There is not a request for or a requirement to rezone the property at this time. As mentioned previously, the property was originally zoned A1 single-family residential during the 1974 zoning district conversion process. The zoning district was renamed to SF2 single-family residential January of 2022. There are no variances, special uses, or conditional uses associated with the site. The current zoning is suitable for the request. Riley County Fire District Number 1 will continue to serve the site. The nearest county fire station is the University Park Fire Station, currently located at 7412 Red Bud Drive. Subject site is located within 5 road miles of a fire station. And this is the final plat illustrating the orientation and location of the new lot's boundaries. There are no utility easements that will be vacated with this plat or this replat. The common lot line between these two lots will be eliminated, and the property is in compliance with the sanitary code. Just a few pics of the site. This is the home occupying existing lot 271. The accessory structure behind the house actually belongs to his neighbor. Continuing in a northeasterly direction, you can see the loop driveway that serves the property. And this pic shows the area between the home and vacant lot 270, showing his existing accessory structures serving the property. He's in the background here. And finally, this is essentially the common property line between lots 271 and 270, with vacant lots 270, with vacant lot 70 to the left of the picture. This is the area the applicant wishes to build his new garage. Staff recommends that the planning board approve the final plat, University Park Unit 15, as it has been determined that it meets the minimum requirements of the Riley County Land Development Regulations, Sanitary Code. If you have any questions, we have glad to field those. Otherwise, this concludes my presentation.
Do we have any proponents to this agenda item who would like to speak for the?
No proponent. Not
Yeah, proponents.
no proponent.
Do you wish to speak?
No.
Okay.
Unless there's question. Bob's done a nice job.
Are there any opponents to the sign? I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor? Any thoughts by the board?
Looks like a slam dunk to me. Don't see any problems with it.
I agree.
I also agree. Mhm.
Well,
There are options for motion.
I just couldn't read the thing.
You're good.
I'm sure. I live to approve the request of 278 and 271 University Park together into a single lot to be known as University Park Unit 15, as it has been determined that it meets the requirements of the Riley County Planning Development Regulations. Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And the next item.
And before we get to that, ma'am, I need to announce that the Board of County Commissioners will hear the plat request on August 21st at 9:30 a.m. in these chambers.
Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing at the request of Matthew Ransom.
They spared no expense with the podium. It's a mini me version. Okay. Well, let's get this started. Okay. Matthew Ransom, or Matt Ransom, has made application with Riley County Planning and Development requesting a residential use designator country estate for an unplatted tract of land to build a house. The subject site is generally located approximately 1.4 miles west of Blue River Hills Road on the north side of Stockdale Park Road in Grant Township. The subject property consists of a 38.5 acre portion of a 58.5 acre parent tract. The applicant wishes to build a non-agricultural residence while clearing the majority of the site for agricultural uses such as pasturing cattle. Thus, the applicant is seeking approval for a residential use designator country estate rather than attempting to rezone the property to single-family residential. Due to the size of the proposed tract, plating is not required. Site, as well as all the properties surrounding it, is zoned AG Agricultural District shown here in gray. The subject site abuts a recently approved residential use designator for a country estate to the west. Much like that one, the applicant intends to use the property to construct a non-farm related residence while also engaging in agricultural activities. There are no variances, conditional uses, or special uses associated with the site. Riley County Fire District Number 1 will serve the site. The subject site is centrally located between Riley Fire Station located at 327 Main in the city of Riley, and the Blue River Hills Fire Station located at 6100 Bob White. Although slightly closer to the Blue River Hills Fire Station, the site is within 5 road miles of a fire station. According to the most recent Flint Hills Joint Land Use Study, the subject site is located within the land use planning zone shown in blue. This is the top half of your map here. Officials from Fort Riley have reported that according to Fort Riley's installation operational noise management plan of 2015, noise sensitive land uses such as housing, schools, and medical facilities, churches, etc., are generally acceptable within the LUPZ. The property is subject to the noise of a notice of potential noise impacts from Fort Riley, Kansas military installation and recommended noise attenuation building methods recorded August 17th of 2020 in the Office of the Register of Deeds. Now, these are the zoning regulations. These are the conditions of approval that we have to evaluate before you even get to the board. The country estate lot shall be 20 acres or larger. It has succeeded enough. Approval shall only be granted following an analysis using the development guidance system and a determination that the proposal is compatible with surrounding uses by using the following criteria. Site shall not be located within the state required minimum operation distances from a permitted confined animal feeding operation. Small ones are 300 or 1,320 feet as the crow flies, and the larger ones are around 4,000. The site shall not be located within the noise zone 2, as I just mentioned, it's located in the land use planning zone, Fort Riley. The site shall not score strong finding for preservation using the land evaluation site assessment system, which is the LISA system. And again, we wouldn't be before you if it scored any less than that. The site should be located in an area where 20-acre home sites parcels already exist within a quarter of a mile from the site. And generally, as crow flies, this is a non-farm residential tract. This too, right next to it, although it's not showing, that's because of the size. Yeah, usually it's a range between 15 and 25 acres to give it. The whole point of that is to give deference to the 20-acre tracts that were already created and that already have the non-farm residential use going on. Tough thing is that there's non-farm residential uses down in this area. However, it really goes off of the classification of the appraisers. So this is what we get. So it doesn't meet that criteria though. Okay. So next, go backwards. Okay. Move forward. So residential use designator for a country estate is limited to one per original parent tract. Country estate parcels are not required to be platted. Again, by size, anything over 20 acres is not required to be platted. But it has to have frontage on a public road. An agricultural protection easement will need to be filed with the Registry of Deeds upon approval of this request, if the board so chooses to do so. A site plan is required as outlined in section 3.17 site plan of the Riley County Land Development Regulations, and that's included in your packet. Here is the site plan. The applicant plans on developing the site for the home and accessory structures with the express purpose of continuing to utilize the majority of the site for agricultural pursuits, maintaining an agricultural buffer to the active farming operation north of the site. That's that 100-foot agricultural buffer you see here. There's a request there to reduce that buffer from the required 200 feet to 100 feet at the location. The active farming operation at this point is hay. And there could be some cattle. Again, that's the agricultural or residential, or the country estate that was recently approved. He's also doing the same thing. He's going to be haying the property and running cattle eventually. So this is kind of something ahead of that. So the west side of the tract is primarily a heavily wooded ravine that buffers the tract on the west. So the driveway will consist of all weather surfacing and have direct access to Stockdale Park Road. And as noted on the site plan, the proposed driveway will be subject to the minimum standards of the driveway standards in the unincorporated area of Riley County, Kansas. So the proposed location of the home and accessory structures heeds the rural design guidelines found in the Vision 2025 Comprehensive Plan, as there is a clear effort to blend in with the existing landscape and topography, while keeping select areas of the site in a natural state. So the request was reviewed with the 2009 Vision 2025 Comprehensive Plan, specifically the development guidance system in chapter 12. The first element of the DGS is conformance to the goals, objectives, and policies of the plan. And as you see here, they allow for the adequate amounts of single-family residential or single-family housing in suitable locations throughout the county. And to also promote development that is compatible with the rural character of Riley County. There's a tough one to get that balance. Suitable location means an ability to blend in with the rural character. So the future land use map, the subject property as the one to the west of it was not located in the designated growth area. And the leases score here is just slightly less than moderate for development. It's still situated at moderate for preservation because of its location. The hardship on the landowner, the landowner does get, or the applicant gets to express on the application any particular hardship that they feel that may incur, it may be incurred if the request were to be denied. And here it is. It is hard to find a reasonably priced small parcel that would home livestock and be able to build on already have a home on it or attached to it. We are looking to relocate from Wellington in a reasonable timeframe. So I asked the applicant with this, if he felt that what he was doing agriculturally maybe could put him in the classification of a bona fide agricultural producer. And he felt that, no, that belongs to someone that's a lot more serious in the farming, but he wants to do this as well. So it acts, quite frankly, as a transition between that single family residential, non-farm residential, if you will, and agriculture. So the staff analysis site plan has been submitted as per the minimum requirements, exhibiting how the site will be laid out and how it will blend in. The required agricultural buffer has been included to minimize conflicts with neighboring agricultural activity. And it is not anticipated that granting the request will be contrary to the goals, objectives, and policies plans. With that, staff recommends the planning board approve the request for a residential use designated country estate, as it has been determined to meet the minimum requirements of the Riley County Land Development Regulations and Sanitary Codes. In this type of request, there's no plat, it doesn't get rezoned. So there's not this does not go on to the Board of County Commissioners. This is approved or denied at this level. Great. And that's all I have. If you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer.
What's the dividing line between the Lisa score? What's the bottom of the strong or the top of the strong for preservation?
3,000 points.
It's 3,000 because it shows higher than that.
Yeah, so modern preservation starts at 3,000.
Okay. All right, so thank you.
Do we have any proponents that would like to speak?
Yeah. One, I just want to come up in case anybody had any questions. The other thing is I was looking over in this. Oh, sorry. My name is Matthew Rantham and my address is 312 Grove Street, Manhattan, Kansas 66503. And this kind of goes to Eric's question to Bob. He was asking about the scoring on the Lisa. I'm not 100% sure, but reading through the Lisa, this Lisa was an older one because there was one applicant that was going to go through with this before me. So that's where the Lisa came from. And I believe this was before Dave Uphoff had done his. And so if you read on here, I believe it says there's scored like a 0 in some of the points where it probably would have scored something for that. But I'm not 100% sure. I'm not the expert on that. I just wanted to bring that up. And if you guys had any questions, could answer it.
What kind of livestock are you intending to put out there?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Right now we have chickens, a donkey. We had a couple of goats, kind of away, a couple of pigs, but a couple ducks and geese. But I come from doing cattle, so I probably end up with some cattle on there. So that's the plan for me. We do also have honeybees, but we have a little bit of everything. And I think that's it. When Bob said, I was thinking, when he asked me questions about doing a ag exemption instead of this, I was thinking, hey, I'm not gonna have a feedlot or, it's not that big of acreage for a whole lot of cattle, and it's pretty overgrown with cedar trees right now. So it'd be kind of hard to have more than maybe 5, at the moment. So, but any other questions? I think that's fun. Thank you.
If there's any opponents within 1,000 feet that would like to speak. Your motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any thoughts by the board?
Seems to meet the criteria. Ready for a motion?
I would entertain motion.
Motion to approve the request for residential use designator country estate as it has been determined that meets the requirements of the Riley County Land Development Regulations. Sure. So.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have to sign this. And then next item, short-term rental regulations.
Sorry.
That way.
All right.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, they probably don't listen to this.
Don't want to miss it.
They don't sound like they're planning on putting in a rental.
Putting in a rental, short-term rental.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna give these to you guys.
All right. Pick these back up.
Okay.
Not that it's super, but.
Yeah, so you're gonna be busy for a while with that.
All right, so you all ready to talk more about short-term rentals? So this was,
No, but-
no, I know, nobody ever is. Right? So exciting. This was on our agenda for last month, but since we only had three here, the board at the time decided, let's table it so we could, have the fun with all of you.
Well, yeah.
Don't want you to miss it, so.
Appreciate it.
Thank your fellow board members for saving it for you. So, and I know we've been talking about this for a while, so we have to cast our memories back a little bit to some of the conversations we've been having. I did enclose the June memo that was provided to you folks, and then the minutes from the Manhattan Urban Area Planning Board. So you can see they had a lot of questions and suggestions and discussion. So basically, before we have public hearing, I need to have some sort of draft language to bring to a public hearing, and based on a lot of the questions and comments and suggestions they had, I didn't feel there was agreed upon draft language to move forward to a public hearing. So wanted to bring it back for you folks, and then based on the conversation we have tonight, we'll have it back before the Manhattan Urban Area Planning Board next month. And really, hopefully we can kind of get some draft language, again, with you folks, and then the Manhattan Board next month, and then start public hearing. But we just got to keep going back and forth until you folks are comfortable. That's perfectly fine. I don't want to rush anything. So, but that's the process essentially. So if you remember, we had three proposed amendments or proposed items we were discussing. And this all came down from conversations and work sessions earlier in the year with the county commissioners. If you remember, we talked about adding a requirement for the property owner to be current on all taxes and fees associated with the STR property. You folks were okay with that, and the Manhattan Urban Area Planning Board was okay with that. So as of right now, unless you folks had any more questions or thoughts on that, both boards were in agreement that that made sense to include. So we'll put that draft language in when we do our public hearing. So y'all still feeling comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay, fabulous. All right, that was the easy one. So the next one was discussing expanding the responsible agent requirement that they must reside and be present in Riley County while the unit is being rented. So right now we do have a requirement for a responsible agent. That can be the property owner or somebody or a rental company, if you will, that they designate basically. So it can be either of those. We do have some property owners who are out of state, not just out of town, but out of state. So we do require to have people that can be here and respond and whatnot. So a couple things that came from looking to expand the responsible agent requirement, essentially. We don't really define in our code right now what response even is. We say you have to respond within an hour to a complaint or a question from your renter within an hour. Does that mean showing up at the door? Does that mean sending a text? Does that mean placing a call? That's an important distinction, because if we want people to be showing up at the door, but your responsible agent doesn't live anywhere around here, they're probably not going to be able to make it in an hour. So there's two things we need to look at doing. We need to define what response is, what response within an hour, what does that look like? And then we need to talk about where the responsible agent should reside and be present. So originally it was in Riley County. But then, and I believe you folks kind of had some of the conversation, staff had the conversation, and then the Manhattan Urban Area Planning Board had the conversation. Well, if you're residing way up north, you're actually a lot closer if you're just over the line in Pot County than you are if you are in Randolph. So do we want to consider a time response rather than a location response, if that makes sense? Do we want to say you have to respond at the front door of your rental within an hour? That actually does two things. Then that says where the responsible agent needs to be, they need to be within that hour. And response means you're showing up on the property. So that's just an example. That's not what we're pushing or proposing, but that's just an example of what we're trying to clarify with the current requirement as well as the expanded requirement. So thoughts, questions, what are you folks thinking?
Excellent idea. In person, on the premises within an hour, you know. That defines it, makes it pretty definitive. Your agent better show up within an hour. Or why are they your agents?
Any other thoughts or?
I agree with that. I mean, it's hard to address the situation out there to address it. I mean, people think it's all the time, and I don't want people to just ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah, and apologies, I can't remember because it was so long ago. I can't remember if it was you folks or the Manhattan board. We have had situations, it happens rarely, but we have had situations where the police are called to a STR unit for one reason or another. And so their question was, well, if the police show up, why does the responsible agent need to show up? I mean, if it was my unit.
Property with rental.
Yes.
Responsible agent does.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd want to show up.
What's the deal? We talk in the morning, decided to respond to the site.
Yeah.
For maintenance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, if it was my unit, I'd want to know that the police are called and I'd want to be there.
Good.
So, but I just want to be transparent about some of what the conversation was at the other board, so.
Yep.
People are making money on something, they need to be held responsible, accountable for, it's a business.
Yeah.
And if you're causing your neighbors problems,
Your neighbors or your renters,
or you're in
because it's a business.
So what do the rest of you folks think about what Bill proposed?
That's fine. The hour in person.
So,
It's not saying the individual that owns it, it's saying a responsible agent.
Right.
So they can hire somebody if they can't
Yes.
be here.
yes,
Probably mentioned for anyone else.
Yep.
yeah, exactly. It can be an individual, it can be a property management firm, it can be the owner, of course, as long as they would meet the definition of showing up within that hour. And we do require when they submit their application or their renewal to, of course, give us that responsible agent information. It's also required to be posted in the unit. So if you're renting a unit, you know who to call if you have a problem. So. Okay, so if we're all comfortable with that, I'm gonna take a quick note.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like Northern County, like it shouldn't have to be in Riley County. They could keep somebody that's really close, but they're like over the, so that's what.
Right.
If we take out the county part of this, go the hour, then they could be in any, it might give the owners more flexibility in picking their agents. We just do the hour.
Right, and that was the consideration, because again, like you can be up in Randolph and still be in the county. But you're closer if you're in Pot County, so, you know, let's maybe look at more of a,
Or what Bunsen County.
or Bunzee or Erie, or, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So I think the hours
Yeah, I would.
there.
Well, it depends on traffic.
if you drove really fast.
Traffic and conditions can impact that, but in general, yes.
Okay. So live and reside and be present within 1 hour
Yeah.
while the unit is being rented, and then response in person within an hour.
And also gives the agents, if you get across. And the doing something that gives them plenty of time to get out of what they're doing, because they gotta go find a problem.
Rather than residency.
Right, rather than residency in the county. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. An hour from the unit. Actually, that should probably be specified. All right, everybody feeling okay with that?
Mhm.
Before we move on? Okay. This is the most fun one. Everybody's excited. Okay. So we talked about requiring setback distances between short-term rental properties. And I believe we talked, so originally it came from the Board of County Commissioners, 500 feet from properties. Thank you. And staff had kind of internal discussions that was really limiting, because I mean, you could have 2 10-acre pieces of property right next to each other. You probably can't even see the house on the other piece of property, but because the properties are within 500 feet of each other, your neighbor can't have it. So that was a little too restrictive. Really the intent of the setback, the separation distances, we could say, is for alleviation of potential traffic and parking issues. If you have a large parcel, that's probably going to be a lot less of a concern than if you're in a neighborhood. So what we talked about with you folks and talked about with the other planning board is 500 feet setback distance between units. It's just as easy to measure. We have the GIS, we can do it, not a problem there. So everybody was on board with that switch, if that makes sense. So I have to kind of refresh myself here. So in terms of the setback distance, some of the different questions the Manhattan Urban Area Planning Board, and I put their minutes in your packet. Some of the different questions they had was how will it be measured? We do have some short-term rentals that are just a bedroom or just a partial. They're not necessarily the entire structure. So let me pop down a bit here.
But that's not the point. The point is traffic congestion, not the structure. So it can be measured between structure.
Right. Yes. So just to kind of continue the conversation for a minute, you can look at this very fancy drawing I put together for you guys. Just to give you visually what they were talking about. So again, we have full house to full house. It's from structure to structure. They wanted to consider the possibility of a partial short.
That makes it too complex to try to measure because it's too easy to say, oh, well, no, I'm in the other bedroom. When they're actually renting a bedroom somewhere else in the house.
Yeah.
So that, just so they can get the distance.
It definitely puts a little bit of an added,
Right.
yeah.
We don't want to add a burden to enforcement or for them to be able to play games.
Sure.
That's my opinion. If it's that close, it's probably not a good idea because the reason we're doing it again is congestion.
Right, yeah. And
American traffic, this is why it's not so much the density per unit or amongst units, it's the knock-on effect to the neighborhood in the adjacent properties who have nothing to do with their businesses.
right.
Yeah.
And if you remember, we did talk about the possibility of doing density limitations, but it doesn't really make sense. For Riley County, the separation distance
Right.
is easier and makes better sense for.
And it's easier to enforce.
It's easier to enforce.
You have to consider that
And
too.
the size limiter.
Full house
That's
is,
for the structure.
yeah. Because what if they're using one bedroom this year and one then, one year they're in compliance and the next year they're like, oh, we switched bedrooms, but we're grandfather, you know. Then it's a bigger issue to track.
And when they do, so let's say this, in 2024, I have the bedroom that I'm permitted and is over here. Of course, Aaron goes in, he does a review, so we know at least what they're proposing, and he does an evaluation, make sure it meets everything. Okay, so 2024, we know, and I'm just kind of giving you extra information. We know the bedroom's over here. In 2025, I want to renew my license and I want to change the bedroom to one that's over here. We would know about that, again, based on what they tell us. And he would, of course, go in and do his evaluation based on this bedroom over here. Now, of course, that would then completely change. Now we're measuring it from over here, so it doesn't.
So, let me ask you this question. How many partial rentals do we have?
I don't know the number off my head, but not many.
Not many.
Not.
And that's my point is, if there's not that many, we're jumping over
Yeah, it's generally.
pillows.
Full structures. And I know my fancy example is the homes, but you can also have them in like an accessory structure, so it would just be structure to structure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's much simpler. And that way, if they do switch things around.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
They can switch it around however they want to.
Yeah.
It's still.
It helps them, it keeps it always being fun.
Yes, we prefer that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, most
Do nothing
do,
but
but
that.
as y'all know, you can do just a bedroom or just a partial, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so you folks are in favor of just leaving it structure to structure?
Yes.
And I have one question.
Yeah,
Penalties. Somebody's not an agent,
yeah.
doesn't show up, what's the penalty?
That is the problem with a lot of our code. Our code enforcement powers are fairly limited. And that's not just STRs, that's a lot of different things in our zoning code. There's some things we have a little bit more,
They're limited by the state.
they're limited by the state.
Yeah, that's what you need to know.
So, right, exactly. And
We don't have control over it
yeah,
without going to the legislature and getting them to change the law.
Yeah. And we did get and I'm of course forgetting the number, the Senate bill we got a couple of years ago that has to do with like the property maintenance code, cleaning up properties. If they have a bunch of stuff on site or vehicles or junk or whatever it is, and they're not complying to get that stuff cleaned up. What the Senate bill gave us the ability to do from the state was we have to go through the whole process still. We have to go through the violation process and try to work with them. Then if they're not going to do that, we do their request to prosecute. We would need a finding of guilty from the judge. And then based on our Board of County Commissioners approving, we as in the county would go in and clean up the property ourselves and then lien the property for the cost. So that was something that was given to us, as well as Crawford County in the last couple of years. We are going through that right now. We haven't gotten to the point where we're going in and cleaning up, but we've been utilizing this bill so far. Now, for something like this, unfortunately, that doesn't do anything. We can't, stop a short-term rental. So,
Not renew their license the following year,
I'm sorry.
not renew their license the following year.
I mean, we can. So what our power is revoking their license or not renewing it.
Right.
But the reality is, if people still want to rent it and use it as an STR,
They're gonna do it anyway.
they're going to do it anyway. And we'll go through don't get me wrong, we'll go through the violation process and the prosecution and all of that. But we need a judge to bring down what needs to be done. We just don't have, the state has not granted Riley County the power to assess fines or, do anything more than send letters, basically, and then ask the judge to do something, basically. And again, that's a limitation for STRs in a lot of portions of our zoning code. So, yeah, so that is definitely a consideration. So we're adding, criteria here that the 90% of STR licensees are going to continue following because they already are. It's just the 10% that we struggle with. If you're already following the rules, you're going to continue to follow the rules. If you're not, you're not. So it's just unfortunately a big gap that we have, so. Okay, so let me take a note before we move on. Oh, and I gave you the handout here. If you can probably tell, it's general. It's not showing you the exact locations of, I just wanted you all to see kind of the spread across the county of where our current licensed STRs are. Just so you can see that, kind of where some of them are. There's a few that we have currently that are within the 500 feet of each other. If they're already licensed and they renew within the 12 months, they can stay. We're not gonna then all of a sudden deny somebody a renewal just because they're within 500 feet. This is for new ones going forward. Once the code would be adopted, it would be for new ones going forward. And if I have a license that I don't renew for at least 12 months, and my neighbor has an STR, and I was okay while I was licensed, but if I let 12 months go by, I can't renew my license because I would have to meet the code in effect at that time. So it's kind of how we catch a lot of that kind of stuff. Okay. Okay, so we talked about structure to structure. The other piece that Manhattan Planning Board talked about was a sliding scale, basically. They talked about, or they asked about, I should say, if a smaller STR, like a 1-bedroom, like a partial, could have a lesser setback distance than a larger unit. So can we consider, do you want to consider a full house STR should have the full 500, let's say. A partial, could that be a lesser setback distance? Their thinking is, if it's just 1 bedroom, that might just be 1 car. If it's a full house, that could be 4 cars. I'm just using numbers. So they just wondered or thought that maybe a partial STR would be less impactful than a full STR. So do we want to consider what they called a sliding scale in terms of
We
setback
don't have that
distances?
many of them, I don't think we do.
We don't, right? We don't.
And the other piece is to that is when you have a lot of young people using these, you don't know that there's only gonna be 1 car.
Right.
They may have 6 people in there and 6 cars.
Yeah.
We don't know. We
Right.
can't tell, and we can't legislate that.
Yeah.
So, we need to keep the setback.
Yeah, I'm just visiting, going home tonight to my own place. There's 14 cars and they're all going on later.
Yeah.
In theory.
Again, that doesn't happen all the time, but I mean, it's just as likely as the scenario they're talking about, where there's only 1 car. So no, I think we just need to keep it at 500 feet. It simplifies everything.
Is everybody thinking? Everybody in agreement with that? Leave it 500 feet between, it's an all or nothing. It's a structure or it's not, if that makes sense what I'm saying.
I think so.
Partial or not, it's a structure. 500 feet between structures, no matter if it's just 1 bedroom or the full house. So I just want to make sure I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the last piece of the 500-foot distance, if you want to turn over your the handout that I gave you. This side of it's a little more detailed. So, yeah. So what we're saying is 500 feet between structures, the intent is to alleviate traffic and parking. Look at the handout there, you're going to see there's two, and these are two existing short-term rentals. They are within 500 feet of each other, but they access their properties completely different streets. Like they not even, they abut each other, but streetwise, they're completely separate. And that, you know, if we have a separation distance like this, that can happen. Obviously, we have it right there already, as an existing example. So we wanted to talk about, and this was something that came from staff. We wanted to talk about the consideration for this type of situation. They're not, again, they're not even using the same road to access their properties, but they're within 500 feet. So they would be essentially penalized trying to mitigate something that's just not going to be an issue for them, if that makes sense. So we would like to explore some language, and I don't know what, it'll be a little bit funky, so I don't know exactly what that language is yet, but to consider when something is on completely different streets, you know, and we could also be talking about corner lots, you know, I'm up here and Jack's over here, we're within 500 feet, but we're still not, we're not going to be parking in the same area. We're not going to be accessing. I mean, over here we will, because we got to get into our neighborhood. But
On a case by case basis, it can be waived
okay,
by the county. Somebody says, oh, all right, we'll just have a look at it. You can look on the map, they're different streets. You don't really have to go out to send somebody in person unless they want to. Or you want to.
I mean, we always go out in person, of course, yeah, because we'll do our on-site inspection.
And that could be,
Like they're notified that they're within 500 feet, it's a little bit illegal. That'd be on case.
So would you want it to be like that, where they would appeal our decision, or, well, you can't be there because you're within 500 feet, so they would have to take an action to question that or appeal it or whatever you want to call it? Or do you want it? Or do you want it, so I hear that, or do you want it more kind of what I'm thinking I was interpreting what you were saying is kind of writing in the language, here's 500-foot setback.
which may be
Deference
waived
given
on a
to,
case by case basis.
Administratively.
Right.
Should the two existing properties within 500 feet are on different streets and only at the decision of the planning office.
Administratively.
so there's a couple different ideas kind of on the table.
And we kind of talked about, the biggest hang up is parking, and it's going to add some parking that would accommodate.
It's parking access.
Person that's staying there, if they had a lot less
Adequate.
private parking, it would
Right.
be an issue anyway,
Right.
especially like big houses and stuff that. Pretty secluded road, you know?
So
I wouldn't necessarily want to deny them and make them, but if you're like, it's obvious, like on this one, oh, they're not even on the same street, like approving it administratively. With that, your discretion on it's mainly for parking impacts.
Well, like an extension from, red line. Planning board, of the ball. The neighborhood, parking areas.
Or could you write it, that it's a 500-foot separation between structures on the same street?
good.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't have even looked at that one over there because it's not on the same street.
Right. We could do
I
something.
think you want to put it as the same street but with the same access. And the reason I say that is, you even if it's on the same street, I mean, it depends on how the street's laid out.
Like a university.
Correct. It can inhibit access depending on how they park.
But then how far back do we define access? Because these two that I gave you technically, if you
I
pull it back
understand.
far enough, they have the same access.
Again, you're gonna have to use some judgment in doing this. That's why administratively, you can look at it and say, no, that they're completely different accesses because they come in on completely different streets. The only access where they have in common is the major road connecting to the neighborhood.
Right.
And that would be like saying, oh, well, because they're within 500 feet on Anderson.
Right.
Okay, so Anderson's a large road and we're worried about access there. No, we're not.
Right.
They can't park there anyway.
Right. So would you folks be comfortable with that? Us doing it administratively? Because I know, Jack, you mentioned bringing it to the planning board. Would you want it before you folks?
Well,
Because this is up to you guys to propose.
No.
We're administrative. Again, if you folks want that, we can write that in.
In my opinion, kind of varies a little bit than the rest of the group. I don't really care about the 500 feet deal. I just want there to be adequate parking, I want there to be adequate access for everyone else. I don't want to be against anyone else, so. I don't.
Yeah, the 500 feet is also about, having them right next to one another where the neighbors, you got a single family home and then there's 3 houses right around it that are rented. And what they do in those houses when they rent, like for football weekends, is party all weekend long. And that's part of what this is about.
It's getting congested in the morning.
Right.
Right.
It becomes congestion, but it's also about noise and people staying up late, a bunch of other things.
Walking around the neighborhood,
Right.
Yeah.
just
Trash.
That's usually where they're getting complaints is they've been partying and they blocking the street.
It's generally, noise and trespass are our most common complaints.
They're close to each other.
Yeah.
But how many houses are there between?
I'm there.
And again, a lot of this is, I don't think we have that many where this situation applies.
Right.
So again, are we addressing something that's not as likely to happen? And the problem that the Manhattan City Board has is it could happen easily here.
Right. They have a very different perspective than you
Right.
folks do, of course, so since they're used to the more dense, so. So is everybody comfortable with some language, and I'll play with it, basically giving, administrative deference to circumstances, essentially?
I
Okay,
trust your all surgeons.
thank you. Then that handles the issue, so.
I'm sure we'll hear about it if there's a lot of complaining.
Can you hear about it
It's just
either
at
way?
that level, they may come, in public meeting and complain
Yes,
if there's an issue with it.
Yeah.
If it rises to that.
they need to go back to the drawing board.
Right.
right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, rest assured, this will not be the last time you'll see the STR regulations. So if you were worried about that,
They have to sell the board with their SDR, otherwise you guys have any other indicators or.
so yes, they should be submitting their application, or at the very least calling and saying, hey, I want to rent my property as an STR 30 days or less. Do you have regulations? And Darren would say, why, yes, we do. He would give them all the information. We have found plenty, and when I say we, it's generally.
The actual SDR.
Yeah, probably. I mean, the reality is there's probably more out there that we don't know about. Darren has found plenty by kind of scouring the vacation rental sites. He's found ones just even kind of driving around. I found one in one of the Manhattan magazines. So we do have our ways of finding things. But yeah, the reality is there's ones out there that we don't know.
And then you just send them a letter, hey,
Yes, yeah, so it would be it would be the same as any of our code enforcement processes. We start with what we call a friendly letter, a notification letter. Hey, just FYI, we saw your address on VRBO. Riley County has short-term rental regulations, so here's the process you need to follow. You got 14 days to submit or get in touch with us. And like with any code enforcement, if they ignore us, then it triggers an actual, okay, now we're serious. This is your first violation notice, and then, give them the information, give them a few more days. And then if they ignore again, final notice of violation, give a little bit more time, and then request to prosecute. So I will say usually, I'm not gonna say all the time, unfortunately, but usually when he sends that first letter out, maybe sometimes it takes the first violation letter, people will get their information in. A lot of times people just don't know. People just aren't aware that we require building permits, or we require licenses for SDRs, or that we're zoned. So, yeah, so we try to give people the benefit of the doubt, so. So that was all I had for the STRs. You guys made it easy.
Appeal process, if somebody does buy a property with Sloan Center, and they get SDR, that will be it's about the, and it doesn't seem to come. And
If they're buying for an STR, they better know what the regulation.
It's my life's work to make sure that people know to call the planning department before they buy property with the intention of doing anything on the property. Call the planning department.
People say, oh, I can buy this, build a home on.
Exactly.
It's the same problem.
Always. I'm on the record. Please call us before you buy any property, because we will give you the scoop. So, because we don't want, people make their own choices, but we don't want people buying a house or buying a property thinking, oh, I'll just build a house. Well, you can't, or at the very least, there's a process you have to go through. Yeah. Of course, we can't control that. Plenty of people buy and then come asking Bob, can I do this? And we try really hard not to say no, but sometimes we are not able to say yes. I'll say it that. So. All right, so anything else with the STRs, anything else that we didn't cover that you folks want to talk about? That was the three, well, I guess it was technically four with this other piece here. Pieces that I wanted to talk about. And you guys made easy work of it. So any other thoughts or comments or concerns? Okay, so I'm gonna put on. I'll probably try to put together a little bit of draft language, and then of course include for the Manhattan Urban Area Planning Board next month when we take this information to them, minutes from your conversation tonight, so they know where you guys are coming from and what your discussions you had for them to also consider. And then hopefully after that evening, we can settle on some draft language and then bring for public hearings, but before both of your boards. So, and then once we get through that, then it'll go back to the commissioners for final approval. So, all right, keep plugging away. That's all I had.
Thank you.
I move we approve adjourn.
You go.
We got a second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Or if you'll sign the ballot.
Here's your other document.
Here's your document back that you wanted.
Yeah. I'll sign that one.
Yep.
You signed it.